Greetings, fellow humans. Katrina here. Quick disclaimer, I'm a professional, not your professional. Nothing I'm about to say should be taken as medical, legal, or otherwise advice. This podcast is purely for education and amusement. That is it. Pod disclaimer over. Not the end of the podcast yet. So today I thought I'd talk about what I don't know about narcissistic personality disorder. I can be perfectly honest and say that I don't think I've ever worked with anyone with narcissistic personality disorder, but I find the diagnostic information interesting, so I thought I'd do it a little bit backwards today. And instead of just reading you the criteria straight out of the DSM, I thought I would take a look at the diagnostic features with you. And the diagnostic features is inclusive of the criteria. So when I say like criterion 3, I'll go back and say what that is at the end when I go over the criteria. So without any further introduction, here we go. Diagnostic features, okay, for narcissistic personality disorder it says the essential feature of NPD is a pervasive pattern of grandiosity, need for admiration, and lack of empathy that begins by early adulthood and is present in a variety of contexts. So individuals with this disorder have a grandiose sense of self-importance, and that's criterion 1. They routinely overestimate their abilities and inflate their accomplishments, often appearing boastful and pretentious. They may blithely assume that others attribute the same value to their efforts and may be surprised when the praise they expect and feel they deserve is not forthcoming. Often implicit in the inflated judgments of their own accomplishments is an underestimation or devaluation of the contributions of others. People with narcissistic personality disorder are often preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. And that's going to be criteria 2. They may ruminate about long overdue admiration and privilege and compare themselves favorably with famous or privileged people. Individuals with NPD, that's narcissistic personality disorder. I should have said that I am going to use that acronym as we continue. So individuals with NPD believe that they are superior, special, or unique and expect others to recognize them as such. That's the third criteria. They may feel that they can only be understood by and should only associate with other people who are special or of high status and may attribute unique, perfect, or gifted qualities to those with whom they associate. Individuals with this disorder believe that their needs are special, like super special, and beyond the ken of ordinary people. Their own self-esteem is enhanced, for example, mirrored by the idealized value that they assign to those with whom they associate. So they're likely to insist on only having that top person, so that top doctor, top lawyer, hairdresser, or instructor, and only being affiliated with the quote-unquote best institutions that may devalue the credentials of those, they might devalue the credentials of those who disappoint them. So individuals with this disorder generally require excessive admiration, and that's criteria 4. Their self-esteem is almost invariably very fragile. They may be preoccupied with how well they are doing and how favorably they are regarded by others. This often takes the form of a need for constant attention and admiration. They may expect their arrival to be greeted with great fanfare and are astonished if others don't covet their possessions. They may constantly fish for compliments, often with great charm. A sense of entitlement is evident in these individuals' unreasonable expectation of especially favorable treatment. That is criteria 5. They expect to be catered to and puzzled. They get puzzled or furious when this doesn't happen, when they're not catered to. So, for example, they may assume that they do not have to wait in line and that their priorities are so important that others should defer to them, and then get irritated when others fail to assist in their very important work. This sense of entitlement, combined with the lack of sensitivity to wants and needs of others, may result in the conscious or unwitting exploitation of others. That's going to be criteria 6. That interpersonally exploitative criteria is a big one. They expect to be given whatever they want or feel that they need, no matter what it might mean to others. So an example of that is these individuals may experience great dedication from others and may overwork them without regard for the impact on their lives. They tend to form friendships or romantic relationships only if the other person seems likely to advance their purposes or otherwise enhance their already grandiose self-esteem. They often usurp special privileges and extra resources that they believe they deserve because they are so special. Individuals with NPD generally lack empathy and have difficulty recognizing the desires, subjective experiences, and feelings of others. That's criteria 7. They may assume that others are totally concerned about their welfare. They tend to discuss their own concerns in inappropriate and lengthy detail, while failing to recognize that other people also have feelings and needs. They are often contemptuous and impatient with others who talk about their own problems and concerns. These individuals may be oblivious to the hurt that their remarks may inflict. For example, exuberantly telling a former lover that I am now in the relationship of a lifetime, boasting of health in front of someone who is sick. And when recognized, the needs, desires, or feelings of others are likely to be viewed disparagingly as signs of weakness or vulnerability. And that's just not true. Vulnerability is not weakness. Those who relate to individuals with NPD typically find an emotional coldness and lack of reciprocal interest. These individuals are often envious of others or believe that others are envious of them. That's criteria 8. They may begrudge others their successes or possessions, feeling that they better deserve those achievements, admiration, or privileges. They may also harshly devalue the contributions of others, particularly when those individuals have received acknowledgement or praise for their accomplishments. Arrogant, haughty behaviors characterize these individuals. They often display snobbish, disdainful, or patronizing attitudes. That's going to be criteria 9. For example, an individual with this disorder may complain about the clumsy waiter's rudeness or stupidity, or conclude a medical evaluation with a condescending evaluation of the physician. So those are the diagnostic features. And that's not to say that somebody with NPD is going to demonstrate all of those criteria. I do believe you only need 5 out of the 9 criteria. That is similar to BPD. Only 5 out of the 9 criteria are necessary. But I want to share the associated features of the supporting diagnosis. So vulnerability and self-esteem makes individuals with NPD very sensitive to injury from criticism or defeat. Although they may not show it outwardly, criticism may haunt these individuals and may leave them feeling humiliated, degraded, hollow, and empty. They may react with disdain, rage, or defiant counterattack. Such experiences often lead to social withdrawal or an appearance of humility that may mask and protect the grandiosity. Interpersonal relations are typically impaired because of problems derived from entitlement, that need for admiration, and the relative disregard for sensitivities of others. Though overweening ambition and confidence may lead to high achievement, performance may be disrupted because of the intolerance of criticism or defeat. Some vocational functioning can be very low, reflecting an unwillingness to take a risk in a competitive or other situations where defeat is possible. Sustained feelings of shame or humiliation and the attendant self-criticism may be associated with social withdrawal, depressed mood, and persistent depressive disorder or dysthymia, a major depressive disorder. In contrast, sustained periods of grandiosity may be associated with hypomanic mood. Narcissistic personality disorder is also associated with anorexia nervosa and substance use disorders, especially related to cocaine. Histrionic, borderline, antisocial, and paranoid personality disorders may also be associated with narcissistic personality disorder. That's interesting to me. But going back to just the diagnostic criteria, like I said, it's a pervasive pattern of grandiosity in fantasy or behavior, that need for admiration and lack of empathy beginning by early adulthood and present in a variety of contexts. So that 5 or more of the 9, you ready to hear the 9? Because here's the 9 criteria for NPD. Number 1, that grandiose sense of self-importance. So that's exaggerates achievements and talents, expects to be recognized as superior without commensurate achievements. Number 2 is preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. Number 3 believes that he, she, or they is special and unique and can only be understood by or should associate with other special high-status people or institutions. Number 4 requires excessive admiration. Number 5 has a sense of entitlement, so that's unreasonable expectations of especially favorable treatment or automatic compliance with his or her expectations. Number 6 is interpersonally exploitive, so that's taking advantage of others in order to achieve one's own ends. 7 lacks empathy, is unwilling to recognize or identify with the feelings and needs of others. Number 8 is often envious of others or believes that others are envious of him or her, or them. Number 9 shows arrogant, haughty behaviors or attitude. So like I said, you only need 5 out of those 9 to meet criteria. And now I want to talk about prevalence for a second. So prevalence is how frequent is in showing up in the community. And according to the DSM-5, not the DSM-5 text revision, I don't have that one yet, but according to the DSM-5, the prevalence estimates for NPD range from 0% to 6.2 in community samples. So the thing about narcissistic traits is that they can actually show up in adolescence fairly regularly, and they do not indicate that the individual will have narcissistic personality disorder. If you think about it, their brain is still developing. They're still testing boundaries. They're still figuring out who they are in the world. So adolescents should not be labeled, in my opinion, with NPD. Individuals with NPD may have special difficulties adjusting to the onset of physical and occupational limitations that are inherent in the aging process. So you would see that in a little bit older person with NPD. There is gender-related diagnostic issues. So if we're just looking at the binary genders, there's 50 to 75% are male. And again, this is just based on the DSM-5, so that might be a little bit outdated. And yeah, I thought that that was really interesting. Oh, I did mention that I didn't mention this, but actually many highly successful individuals also display personality traits that might be considered narcissistic. It's only when these traits are inflexible, maladaptive, and persisting and cause significant functional impairment or subjective distress do they constitute narcissistic personality disorder. That's important to take into consideration, because if we just label somebody as narcissist, they might meet some of the criteria, not necessarily all of it, and they might not have the maladaptive or functional impairment of any kind. So that's something to take into consideration. The 2 other things that I mentioned really briefly, the mania or hypermania, and then the substance use disorders. So grandiosity may emerge as part of a manic or hypomanic episode, but the association with mood or functional impairments actually helps distinguish these episodes from narcissistic personality disorder. The other thing that I mentioned was the substance use disorder. So NPD must also be distinguished from symptoms that may develop in association with persistent substance use. And I don't have the criteria for that substance use disorders pulled up right now, but there's basically a use disorder for just about every substance. And sometimes with addiction, there can be behaviors that are consistent with some of the criteria that I mentioned for NPD, but that doesn't mean they have NPD, okay? So if in hearing all this, you were like, oh my God, that sounds like so-and-so. That sounds like him. It sounds like her. It sounds like them. Well, no, let the clinicians diagnose, let their treatment team help them. You don't need to go calling people narcissistic. But I do notice that on TikTok lately, there's a lot more like, at least I'm on the mental health side of TikTok. So it seems like there's a lot more of stuff about NPD, BPD. There's even a little song that's like, Am I depressed? Is it anxiety? Do I have ADHD? I can't sing, but it's a good song and TikTok is hilarious. So with that, that's the what I don't know about NPD or narcissistic personality disorder. Take it with a grain of salt. I read from the book, the DSM-5, which came out in, I remember this very specifically. This book came out in May of 2013. That was the month that I graduated. So I actually learned in my schooling from the DSM-4 and well, the DSM-4 TR. And then as soon as I graduated, I went and grabbed this big purple book and started reading because some of the things were different from the fourth version, and some of the things are different in the DSM-5 TR, the text revision that's out now. I do believe it's out now. I forget what exactly is different, but I do believe they've added a grief disorder, a tangent for another time. If you enjoyed today's episode, go ahead and click the button on the website to support the show. And I actually do appreciate you guys simply for existing.